Okay friends, what you see in front of you is a Dell optiplex 790 computer, and today I'm going to strip down and take a motherboard out, all the parts. Okay, so obviously there's a lid comes with it here, and if I can just see where the lid is. Okay, so basically you would have this lid on it, which sit like this. Okay, so basically what you do is you pull the handle up and you take the lid off. That's the first thing you do. Okay, so next thing you would do is, here is your CD-ROM drive. You disconnect the cables here and you pull the lid up and you lift out the CD-ROM and shut it down. Next thing is to move out the hard drive. You have a catch here. Okay, so you pull it across to your left and you lift out the hard drive. What you want to do is disconnect the cables. Okay, so you disconnect the two saddle cables, okay, which is this one and this one. You set the hard drive out to one side. The next thing you want to do is take them out of the motherboard. You've got a blue and a black one there. Okay, you leave that there. The next thing I'm going to do is take out the RAM sticks. You press the small lever down. And in this particular one there's 16 gigs. Okay, that is RAM. And you can set that to one side. Now, it's very important that you touch the backs to take out the static, otherwise you can fry the motherboard. And it is recommended that you do wear an anti-static band or a pair of anti-static gloves. Okay, so you take out the RAM, okay, which comes out of here. Now, not in any particular order. The next thing you want to do is remove your solder cables. Okay, so next thing is we want to take out the power supply, which is this one. First thing we want to do is lift this, and it basically slips out, and you want to take the cables off it. Okay, so you take it out first, then you get a screwdriver, and down here you have a small slot. You press down on it, but the first thing you want to do is turn it round. Now, always take your time when you're doing it. And here you'll see a couple of screws that hold the power supply unit in place. So you want to remove these. Okay, just take your time. There's no particular rush on it. And this holds the power supply in. Okay, so when you take a power supply, you want to pull this cable up here, and that's where you put your graphics card in. Okay, PCI slot. Then you want to carefully, there again, press this wee lever down, and power supply should. Okay, so let me shut this down a second. Okay, so next thing you want to do is disconnect the power supply from the motherboard. Okay, so push the wee arrow key in and lift it out. So you press it in and pull it out. Then you want to take the 24 pin one out. There again at the bottom here, you have a small lever here. You want to push that there in and pull the power supply out nice and carefully. And obviously make sure you've got it disconnected. a bugger sometimes to get out. Okay, so just take your time and push it down with the wee screwdriver, the wee lever, and it should eventually, if you're careful, don't try to force it. And sometimes it can be a wee bit awkward. And that's the power supply. Check it, the 24th pin out. Now, power supply, be careful with it. Okay, so that's your power supply. Okay, small end factor power supply. And you see the fans pulled in there. It's a good idea to blow it out, blow the dust out of it. And you have a couple of levers at the side of the case. Inside. Okay, so that's the power supply unit out. So floppy disk out, hard drive out, RAM out, memory some people call it DIMM, and that's the Dell Optiplex 790 power supply, small factor form. So the next thing you're left with here is obviously the heatsink and fan. There's two screws here, hold it in here. Okay, you also have a few other connectors here, friends. Now, this one here is your speaker one. Okay, so you want to basically follow the speaker one, which is here. It'll say INTR speaker, and basically you want to remove that. Okay, so that's the speaker disconnected. This thing you want to remove is the fan. This one here. Okay, so it sits beside the power supply one. And it is a good idea. There's a wee lever in the front of it. If you press it in, it'll come straight out. Okay, so that's the fan disconnected. There's a lever here. You can lift up, and the fan should lift out. Okay. So power supply's out, hard drive's out, RAM's out. Okay, so next thing you have here is your front panel here. Okay, you've got two connectors here. So to get it down, you're going to have to disconnect your fan first. Now, it's also plugged in over here. And let's see now. There's a wee button in it here. That's the fan disconnected from the motherboard. You do have a couple other wee cables that you can get out over here as soon as you take this out. So we'll need a storage screwdriver. And we need to take this particular screw out. Just take your time. That's a CMOS battery for anybody that doesn't know what that is. Some people reset the CMOS battery or the CMOS by basically pushing a wee clip in and removing the battery. For some people, some companies recommend 5 minutes. And you've also got a password here at the top. If you take that wee jumper and put it in that one, and obviously disconnect first, plug it in, that'll clear what they call the password jumper. This one here. So we want to take these screws out as carefully as possible. You don't want to be using brute force. And you don't want to be dropping any on the motherboard. Well, this particular motherboard is no good anyway, it's done, so Same again, you have another 2 screws here. Just basically set them down in order so you know where exactly where they are. So you have 4 screws here. That's holding the other fan in place. And there's 2 more, one over here. It's also a good idea to clean these if you decide to put them back in again. And we'll put that one over there, there's 2 different sizes. Okay, so that's your fan. You can see a wee bit of dust in there, so it's a good idea to blow that out because that can be used again. That's called an exhaust fan for taking out the, this would be the heatsink here, and then the processor would sit underneath it. So what we need to do is we need to remove these 4 screws. And then underneath that would be our processor. And I'll be using this heatsink again. As I say, there's no rush in it, just take your time. And then there's a couple other wee cables to disconnect. Now, if you're not sure and you've got another motherboard the same, it is a good idea to mark the cables so you know exactly where to put them if you've never done it before. Let's see now. I need to carry on here because these screws aren't properly out. Now to take a motherboard itself out, you will see you have a screw here, you have another screw here, you have one up here, and you have another one up there. You have one up here, and you have one in between the memory slots. So you have 6 screws to take out to remove the motherboard. And obviously you've got a couple of connectors there, you've got to disconnect the back panel. And this motherboard is basically useless, as computers don't last forever. And it is a good idea to watch a couple of videos on YouTube if you've never done it before, because you can screw up very quick. Or if in doubt, get someone to do it that knows what they're doing. Okay, so we're near enough there. There's not a whole lot left here. Always be very careful when you're working around a motherboard, especially when you're putting a new one, or even having to replace something. Okay, so obviously this will have to be cleaned again to be used. Well, it's alcohol based, and this is the heatsink for this particular one here. So what you see there is your processor. Okay, so that's your heatsink out, floppy, memory, hard disk, and so I'll leave the screws in because it'll be a matter of just putting it back, something similar if you've got the same motherboard. Now, this is the processor here, so obviously all this crap has to be cleaned off, the thermal paste, before you decide. Now you can see you can get at the other connectors here, and this cable has to be disconnected too, which runs to your USB ports and all at the front, and then basically unscrew the motherboard and take it out. So let me see, there's another connector here to come out. Now, that's for the front control panel. And you definitely do not want to be forcing these, okay? Alright, so if you can't get at it, then you could go ahead and screw the motherboard on. That's the other power cable disconnected. Okay, so you can actually go ahead and remove the motherboard if you can't get at it, and then when you've got the motherboard in your hand, you can go ahead and take that out. So what I will do is I'll go ahead and loosen the screws on the motherboard. So you've got one over here. And you've one here. You've got three on each side. Okay, so we're going to put the motherboard screws down here separately. As you see, there's no rush, there's two screws out already. Now, you can remove that other fan, but personally it's not in my road putting another motherboard in, the same one. It's the same size, so I'll be happy enough to work around that rather than start poking and trying to force it out. Okay, so you have another screw here. And one thing to keep in mind is if you're going to be putting another motherboard in, try and get the same model. Now you could find the holes on the tower case itself different, and you may have to alternate it, to reboard or something like that, which could maybe give you more problems. Okay, but one over here. And at the same time I do not want to snap the wee cable up. So you'll see on the motherboard you've got power INT speaker, that's your speaker wire. And up and doubt have the manual. You see there's the seamless body and there's a wee jumper, 2-pin jumper there. You can also put a wee jumper in that to clear the seamless too. 1, 2, no. To make sure there's no other screws that I can see. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And I think there's more screws in here. Okay. Okay, so what I'll be doing is taking the back panel off here and taking the back panel off and taking this out. Just a small video to give you an idea on how to go about doing this. One, two, three. Just make sure all the screws are out. I think there's one here. Okay. I think there's another screw holding it somewhere if I can see it. 1, 2, 3. Right, so we'll have to get the back panel out. Okay, so that's basically it stripped down to the burst sensors. I'll just have to lift the motherboard out and disconnect these cables here. Okay, so I just want to share this with you. And definitely all the screws are all definitely out. Okay friends, thanks very much for watching. Just a small video on how to strip a motherboard. Power supply, hard drive, floppy disk, or sorry, exhaust fan, heatsink, and floppy disk. Now to get the hard drive out of here, you just pull them 2 blue levers in, which would basically be this one and that one. The hard drive slides out, and then you just pull the wee case out one side and you put another hard drive on. Okay, so that's a 2 terabyte hard drive. Not a whole lot in a motherboard. Obviously this back case has to come out. And then that should let me lift the motherboard out completely. Disconnect these cables here. This would be the front panel case. That's this bigger one. And I don't want to be forcing this. This here just comes straight out. And we have to obviously take that out too. That's where your hard drive sits into place, and that's going to keep the motherboard in tight too. So we'll take this out. And as you can see now, it is pretty loose to take out. Now I will be using the processor again. Okay, so be careful when you take a processor out that you put it back in the same way, and you want to clean all this crap of it here, all this thermal paste. Okay, you definitely don't want to be getting that in your hands. Okay friends, thanks very much for watching. I know it's not the best of video, but memory slots, power supply, heatsink, which you also have to clean the back of it where it goes against the processor. And that's your processor there. To get the processor right, then obviously you would push that wee clip in, it'll lift up and you just lift it out gently. But I want to clean it before I actually remove it. And then obviously the back panel here will come out. And then there'll be a new one going back in. Okay, that's a Dell optiplex 790 small form motherboard. Thank you.